Evening, ladies and gents. This is going to be your last webinar from me for this semester. I believe you've got about a month's break, which is great for you guys. Hopefully a lot of you are up to speed and keeping up with all the assessments. The good news about tonight is it's going to be a nice short webinar, and it's kind of a summary webinar. It's probably only going to be about half an hour, maybe 35 minutes or so. So it's NDP, it's 304D, and it relates just to section 2. There's a couple of assessment activities, so again, what we've done is we've almost provided the answers for you for those. So assessments, activities number 3 and number 4. There's only 2 for this particular webinar. So yeah, answers are there. So that's good news. Right, so I'll stop blabbering and let's get on with it. All right, here we go. So, overview, general sort of summary, nutrition, obviously. Providing good nutrition is important for a good diet. Good nutrition plays a vital role in preventing infection, improving immunity, recovering from illness, and improving quality of life. And we've covered a lot of those aspects as we've gone through these webinars, and obviously in your reading notes. Special dietary needs can also relate to age. Children have different dietary requirements and tastes from adults and also from the elderly as well. Ability to chew and digest certain foods, and again this could be age related, either young or elderly, or it could be relating to a particular medical condition. Nutritional requirements for a particular condition or recovery from illness or operation. Obviously, dietary needs will change based on that, especially after an operation where tissues are healing. Metabolism goes up during periods of illness, so you definitely have different nutritional requirements post-operation or during an illness, or post-illness as well. Supply of special foods to prevent illness, food reactions. Obviously we've talked about allergies and intolerances. Addition of supplements or electrolytes, which we talked about briefly, and again there'll be a lot more about that when we get on to the sports section next semester. Right, some other reasons for modifying menus, some specific reasons. Obviously, medical conditions, we've talked about diabetes and how, especially type 2 diabetes, is generally considered a lifestyle disease. They have found that there are genetic links even with type 2 diabetes, but lifestyle really does pull the trigger effectively. So lack of exercise, poor diet, too many calories, too much sugar, too much fat, obviously can lead to type 2 diabetes. High cholesterol, individuals with high cholesterol, again, that could be a genetic link. Some people suffer from something called familial hypercholesterolemia. Again, if you break that word down, familial means coming from your family, hyper means elevated, cholesterol obviously is cholesterol, emia means blood, which basically just means that you have a genetic disorder where you've got high levels of cholesterol in the blood. So people like that, obviously, they can't control it completely with exercise and diet. They'll need to be medicated, but to prevent really excessive blood cholesterol levels, they're recommended specific diets, and obviously encouraged to do exercise as well. Heart disease, we know all the implications of diet on heart disease, and all of these things affects the client's ability to eat in the safest possible way. So for children and elderly, both may have less appetite and require smaller portions. Children have different taste preferences to adults, and we've covered that quite extensively. In terms of weight management, dietitians are still recommending a low-fat diet for fat loss, and I know this is, not necessarily controversial, but it's not recommended by everyone, but dietitians still recommend that purely because of the first law of thermodynamics, which is the conservation of energy, and acknowledging the fact that fat is the most calorie dense of foods. It's got 9 calories per gram. So if you consume more fat or more grams of fat, then you have a much greater likelihood of not burning off those calories, and therefore any excess calories obviously will get stored, and the most efficient storage form of extra calories is in the form of fat. Malnourished and obese clients will require special diets and obviously portion sizes as well. And again, we've covered that in a fair amount of detail. Other reasons, we did talk about allergies. The foods to which one is allergic are obviously strictly avoided, as the most serious form of allergic reaction, which is anaphylaxis, can occur in minutes and it can be life-threatening. Foods for these clients must not be contaminated with any food or substance they are allergic to. I did mention a couple of weeks ago about people having an anaphylactic shock when they've kissed somebody who had eaten a peanut butter sandwich. So some people are incredibly sensitive. I also mentioned that if it's done in a very medically controlled manner, they have managed to desensitize some people to the specific allergens by progressive microexposure, in other words, tiny exposure to these specific allergens. And with some people, and they don't know why it happens with some people and not with others, but some people actually do desensitize. But again, obviously it has to be done in a very medically controlled manner. Intolerances. Foods and substances obviously should be avoided, not life-threatening. They don't lead to an immune response, but can cause diffuse symptoms. We talked about irritable bowel syndrome, which can be a number of different causes. Gluten intolerance, lactose, fructose, FODMAPs. We'll talk a little bit more about FODMAPs a bit later. And of course, personal taste, another reason for modifying menus. So personal taste is obviously very specific to each individual. And this is a slide that we had on previously. I didn't go through all of those points previously, and I'm not going to go through them all again. They are just there for your own reference. So, diversity in a diet. Nutrition programs require diversity to increase compliance and improve enjoyment. The modern Australian menus contain a range of ethnic foods, so there really isn't a traditional Australian diet now because we've had such wonderful influences from a lot of ethnic foods. So modern Australian diet is actually a very multicultural diet, so it does provide a lot of diversity. So if a client has been moved to an aged care facility or any residential facility and they're used to having a lot of variety at home, then obviously they should be catered for in terms of the variety as much as is possible. Otherwise they tend to lose their appetite, they tend to lose their enjoyment, etc., and therefore they tend to eat a lot less and therefore could become nutritionally deprived. So the goal is to offer a variety of fresh, good quality foods that meet a range of taste and obviously cultural preferences. So when we're introducing new foods to the diet, new foods and meals should be introduced to provide nutrient variety as well as obviously preventing boredom. That's one of the things that leads to a lack of interest, obviously a lack of general nutrition, is just getting bored with the diet. It's best to introduce one or two different foods or meals at a time rather than drastically changing the whole menu. And the best way to do this in a residential setting, obviously, is to get feedback from the client on their personal likes and dislikes, and also asking them what their favorite food items are. And you may find that they particularly enjoy the taste or the flavor or the texture of a sauce or a gravy. So obviously what you can do is keep the sauce or the gravy and change the meat, the grain or the veggies or the way that they're prepared, but by keeping the sauce, they actually still enjoy the food as much, but you actually change the main food items within that meal. When it comes to fresh foods, many people believe that processed and pre-prepared foods save time and money. And short term, that might be true, but it is important to know that the best quality food obviously is fresh food. Clients' nutritional requirements must be met, and they really are the number one priority. Processed and pre-prepared foods are, for a start, they're less appetizing, unappetizing, or less appetizing because they don't taste or look as good as fresh foods. They also don't supply the client's nutritional requirements. So obviously good quality fresh food is going to be your best option. And this is the same case as, if you're working in a gym and you're working at the health food bar, you're selecting the best quality food, whether you've got a client who's got an eating disorder or whether they're a client who obviously is trying to put on mass or just improve their general fitness and health. Best quality food is best. So the first assessment activity, activity 3, this one, the first part of this, actually, the question that's asked is, how can specific needs of clients be accommodated whilst ensuring that nutritional requirements are also catered for? So obviously some ways to do this: consultation with the clients, as we mentioned earlier, awareness of the various groups in the local community, so cultural groups, ethnic groups, etc., consultation with a dietitian, nutritionist, doctor, or cultural advisor, having circular menus, sufficient choices on the menus if possible on a daily basis, separate menus or menu streams for modified clients or clients with specific cultural needs, and also periodic review of menus and introduction of new menu items, and again obviously in consultation with the clients. The second part of this assessment activity, the question that's being asked is, why is it important to document clients' needs and communicate this with kitchen staff? And again, this is quite obvious. Documentation that a written record is available for all staff to refer to. That's why it's important. So everyone is really on the same page here. It's important to get the client's dietary requirements right. Nutrition obviously can make a big difference to one's health and well-being. Clients with food allergies or medical conditions that require special foods are at risk if mistakes are made. And finally, clients whose religious beliefs prohibit certain foods would be very distressed if those foods are served to them by mistake. So really here you're looking at health and well-being, any medical conditions, and culture, religion, ethnic, and also ethical considerations for your individual client. So, including sufficient choice in your menus. As we know, correct nutrition is based on fresh, varied food that should also taste good. So a variety of foods on a day-to-day basis is vital for adequate nutrition. And what we're talking about there is adequate nutrition delivery, and we're really looking at macronutrient, the spread of macronutrients there for energy and obviously for tissue resynthesis, but we're also talking about your micronutrients. Micronutrients, as you'll remember, are used for a huge number of cellular functions. If you consider that vitamins and minerals are the essential components in enzymes and coenzymes, and a lot of these enzymes and coenzymes regulate metabolism. So again, having variety makes sure that you have not only a variety of macronutrients, but also a variety of micronutrients. Adequate choice of foods within a cultural group. So again, it's important to broaden your knowledge of what it means to be a vegan, what it means to that individual, and what the general term vegan actually refers to, and the importance of combining different foods if you are dealing with a vegan client. But also being aware of food preparation requirements for food to be considered halal or to be considered kosher. So again, broadening your knowledge, very, very important when you're working with different cultural groups. Special attention given to the requirements, obviously, of sick and nutritionally vulnerable clients. So in terms of portion sizes, Appetite varies, again, depending on age, daily activities, preferences, health, or sickness. Particularly children and elderly clients will have a capricious, which basically means just a very changeable appetite. So sometimes they have huge appetite, and then other times they have less of an appetite. And again, people recovering from illnesses or operations, again, especially if they're children or elderly clients with that type of capricious appetite, if they're also recovering from an illness or operation, they may require special considerations. The menu should offer a choice of portion sizes, so going from small, medium, and large to accommodate fluctuations in appetite. And I know that where I'm working at the rehab hospital, they offer small, medium, and large. So again, as we've stated, studies show that people who eat a wide variety of food are healthier, live longer, and have reduced risk of developing a lifestyle illness. Optimal variety then involves eating a mixture of foods from the food groups, the main food groups, including vegetables, your fruits, your meat, fish, dairy, and cereals. So we mentioned previously, a couple of weeks ago, about selecting seasonal fruits and seasonal vegetables. Partly for the benefit of having nutritional variety, but also if you've chosen it seasonally, then it's going to be much more economical. So you actually get a double benefit there, nutritional variety as well as making it economical. Now, it says cereals, and obviously there we're talking about grains, but just as a little bit of an elaboration, I haven't talked much about grains and what grains are. So grains as a major category of food can really be subdivided into two main subgroups, and those are your cereal grains, which come from the grass family, and those include your corn, your wheat, your rice, your oats, your barley, and your rye. And then you have your legumes and your pulses, which actually come from the pea family. So those include peas, beans, lentils, soybeans, and also peanuts. So your cereal grains can actually, or are actually considered seasonal as well. So you have your warmer seasonal cereals, and you have your cooler seasonal cereals. So the cooler ones first are the largest category, which includes, again, your corn, your wheat, your rice, your oats, your barley, and your rye. And the warmer season would include corn and millet. So again, if you can select seasonal cereals or seasonal grain cereals, again, it's more economical and also allows you to put some variety into your client's nutrition. I did say that we were going to talk a little bit more about FODMAPs, because I did mention FODMAPs again, I think it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned them in relation to gluten intolerance, because a lot of people have gone on gluten-free diets in the belief that they have problems with the digestion of gluten, and therefore they are intolerant to gluten. And what they've discovered now is that a lot of people are actually not intolerant to gluten, but they actually have problems with FODMAPs. Now, FODMAPs, by definition, or the acronym, actually stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So FODMAP. And that's what they stand for. And so effectively what they are is short-chain, indigestible carbohydrates. So effectively what happens when you consume these, they go through your small intestine, they don't get digested, they end up in the large intestine, and they get broken down by the bacteria in your large intestine. And they're actually hydrogen producing as opposed to methane producing, and that hydrogen tends to bloat the large intestine, and that leads to symptoms of irritable bowel disease. So there are a lot of people most people actually have problems if you consume large quantities of FODMAPs. So let me give you some examples of food that actually contain FODMAPs. Obviously your wheat and your barley, and rye, those are high sources of FODMAPs. So by removing gluten-based foods, that can actually remove some of the things that actually lead to that IBS symptoms. But it may be nothing to do with gluten. It might be the FODMAPs that are actually in your wheat and the barley. But there are a lot of other products that are not gluten related, so they're not cereal related, not grain related, that also contain FODMAPs. Examples would be onions, garlic, cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, your cabbage, as well as some fruits like apples and pears, and also artificial sweeteners like sorbitol and xylitol. They do have high concentrations of a specific type of FODMAP called polyols. And for me personally, I know that if I consume the mints that actually contain a lot of sorbitol or xylitol, it actually really upsets my intestines and leads to a lot of bloating for me personally. So I actually can't tolerate artificial sweeteners, especially that type, the sorbitol or the xylitol. Other types of FODMAPs, these are actually specifically called galactans, so it's a type of FODMAP called galactans. Your legumes and your pulses, so lentils and even peanuts do actually have high concentrations of galactans and therefore FODMAPs. So again, just being aware of what can lead to IBS, or and selectively removing things from the diet can actually solve a lot of problems. And this is not just for your clients; it's for yourself and for for friends and family. Experimenting with removing different things. So it's actually worth looking up FODMAPs and finding a little bit more about these. So within each of these food groups, variety should also be offered, obviously. Choice equals ingesting a range of different foods that are appealing, tasty, of good quality, and obviously nutritious as well. So, the sensory assessment of food. Food obviously must look good, it must smell good, and it must taste appealing. Flavors encourage appetite and obviously enhance enjoyment. So just looking at food, if we're looking at sight, most people are very visually stimulated, so food should have a variety of colors, be fresh and properly cooked, and clean and well presented. They did some experimentation back in the 1960s and 70s where they added bold colored, your primary colored food dyes to a lot of foods, and what they found was, especially with savory foods, less so with the sweet foods, but with the savory foods, when they added, for example, a bright blue dye to meat and vegetables and potatoes and things, they actually found that there was quite a substantial reduction in the consumption of food because it just didn't present very well. So there's a big association between the look of food and your actual appetite. Also, when it comes to smell, food should smell fresh, pleasant and appetizing. Personally, I'm actually very, very scent oriented. It's probably not the best sense to be heightened when you're working in the fitness industry or working in hospitals. Nonetheless, if food doesn't smell quite right, I find that it actually really does reduce my appetite and actually turns me off food very quickly. And you'll find that there will be some clients who are very much the same. So smell and taste are very much associated. Together with smell, they combine to produce flavor. So flavor is the taste on your taste buds, but it's also combined with the smell. Now, personally, I remember having a really bad cold, and I actually don't like the taste of mustard. I don't like the sensation that goes up the back of your nose when you consume mustard and things like that. And I remember being at a Christmas party eating ham sandwiches that were slathered with mustard, and I remember thinking that it tasted really spicy, but it actually really tasted very nice because I couldn't actually smell. I didn't have that odor going up the back of my nose, so all I thought that it was actually very spicy ham. So again, flavor comes from what you taste and also what you smell. There are 7 basic tastes. You probably are familiar with most of these, but the 7 basic tastes are sweet, sour, bitter, salty, umami, which is a savory flavor or savory taste, piquant, which basically means a pungent taste, and metallic. So combinations of all of those can either enhance the flavor or negate the flavor. And you'll know that when you've combined different flavors, if you combine them well, it really does create an incredible taste sensation. But if you combine them badly, it really can go horribly wrong. You've probably seen that in the show MasterChef, where they've experimented with different tastes, and sometimes they do get it very badly wrong. Touch and texture, or how it feels in the mouth. We often talk about the term mouth feel. There should be a variety of well combined textures in a meal. If you think about a typical meal that you might have, especially if you're an omnivore eating meat and vegetables, there's the chewiness of meat that you actually need to masticate on or chew on. There's the stodginess of your starch-based vegetables like your potatoes and your rice, and then there's hopefully the crunchiness and the crispness of fresh vegetables and fruit. So just again, that nice combination of different textures really enhances the palatability of food. So a variety of healthy cooking methods again should be used to prepare food, again for creating different textures. You know, if you think about boiled vegetables as opposed to stir-fried vegetables and the different textures that they actually create. So again, nutritious foods minimize sick, aid growth, development and repair, assist maintenance of independent lifestyle, aid in recovery from illness or operation, and contribute to health and well-being. So well-prepared, nutritious food that is enjoyed plays a vital role in one's quality of life. So it really is important to create an environment where the client still feels that they have a certain amount of independence, and they feel that they have at least some control over at least some parts of their life, regardless of their age or the type of facility that they're actually living in. Because if they were living at home and they were living independently, they controlled what they eat, and they're suddenly in a situation where life is dictated for them. So again, giving them that opportunity and giving them the choice is very, very important for enhancing their quality of life, as it were. So your final assessment, in fact, your final couple of slides on this, we definitely will be finishing nice and early. Assessment activity 4, so there's only 2 assessments in this particular section. So necessity of choice. Why is choice necessary? That's the actual question that's asked. Well, not all people will like, want, or be allowed to eat the same things. People choose to eat foods that appeal to them at the time of choice, because again, it does vary a lot throughout the day if you're constantly eating something. For example, again, I've actually just come back from holiday. I was in Hong Kong for 10 days, and I actually don't eat a lot of Chinese food in Australia because there are so many other choices. And almost for every lunch and dinner, I actually had Chinese food, and by the time I got to my 10th day, I think I'd probably eaten enough Chinese food to last for the next few months. So again, just because you like something, you don't like it forever. Again, other examples of that. You like wet dishes one day, or you might like, a roast or steak on the next day. Choice keeps people interested in their food and encourages them to eat, and provides a range of foods that supply nutritional needs, even if diets have to be modified. If one becomes bored with food choices, they will lose their appetite and interest in food. And that's really just answering the questions that we've covered in the previous slide. So, and your last page, the last part of this assessment question is, Why is it important that food has color, a variety of textures, and looks appetizing? Now, you could answer this with your eyes closed, but much of one's enjoyment of food is stimulated by the way the food looks. It must look fresh and appetizing with adequate serves, neither too large or too small. If food doesn't look appetizing, many clients will refuse to eat it. Often clients have jaded appetites and need more encouragement to eat, and again that could be just because of a loss of interest, maybe because of that change of environment, or it might be because of a medical condition. Serving appetizing and balanced meals will help to stimulate appetites and will contribute to clients' satisfaction. All right. That was 35 minutes, so right on time. So as I said, that was your last module with me in this semester. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed what we've covered so far. I know that Anthony will be in contact with all of you to get some feedback, and I look forward to seeing you guys in about a month's time for semester 2. All right. Good luck with all your assessments, and see you in a month.